the clock ran out.
Captain William Mayhem sitting right here before you in our new Captain's Quarters podcast studio. And there's me good pals, Davey Longwood and old Gunner Hellfire. Good to see you guys. Yes, I was leaning over to make sure I spelled it right. Here's to all of you. As always, a traditional cheer to start off, a toast to each and every one of you that is watching us. We thank you if you're here. If you're late coming in, get your rum and get busy. And this is Kraken tonight. Oh, quite good it is. So we welcome everybody here to the show tonight. Wow, look at the list of people that are in. Looks like we got quite a few, Mr. Longwood. Is that true?
Yes.
Very good, very good. Well, let's not just waste any time. Let's get kicked off here and tell everybody how they can find us and what they should do to subscribe to us and be a part of our show. Ladies and gentlemen, YouTube, captainsquarters.com. That's our broadcast title. It is our podcast name. It can also be found on Facebook. And if you go to YouTube and watch us from YouTube Live, you'll be able to actually talk to us and be a part of the show. If you watch us from Facebook, you can still kind of do it, but we don't know who you are. But there on YouTube, we get to see your name. So like us, subscribe to us, hit that bell. The more the merrier, and it will make us even more successful. We look forward to having you all here. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Longwood always has a great quote of the week, so let's see what he's brought up for a quote of the week. History is not a burden on the memory, but an illumination of the soul. I love that one. Very good, Mr. Longwood. That is a great one. And that was by John Dahlberg Acton. Hi, that's a good one. And since our show is nothing but about history of all kinds, well, ladies and gentlemen, that's an appropriate quote for the day. And if you can hear Max in the background, he's agreeing with us. So there you have it. It is also time for our question of the week, ladies and gentlemen. What be your favorite pirate book? Fiction or non-fiction? Whatever you like, we'd be interested to know what is your favorite. I happen to have a couple. If I were to say the book that we're going to talk about tonight is one of my favorites, that would be biased and it'd be obvious, but hey, there you go. But I am partial to, like all the writings of Peter Pan and Captain Hook. Those were great stories. I love those. And those were a lot of fun for me. Our crew adventures, ladies and gentlemen, for 2022. We have a couple of things to tell you about. This weekend is the Seawolf Privateers Murder Mystery and Dinner Show, July 30th. I will be there doing a little bit of magic prior to the show and then enjoying a good dinner and watching the entertainment of all of them participating. Mr. Max, I don't need your opinion. Come here. Come over here and be a part of the show. We had our crew social and recruitment last weekend. And guess what? Ladies and gentlemen, we have 10 new members in the crew and building strong. Let's see, September 16th. Ancient City Con, the 16th, the 17th, and the 18th of September, which means the 19th is a Monday. We're going to have our podcast out there for most of Ancient City Con. And then on Monday night, we're going to talk about all the things that we saw, we did, and have a good time, and just rebroadcast everything that we did for the whole weekend. So September 19th, which is also Talk Like a Pirate Day, and Scarlett Gearhart's birthday, and she will be our guest in the studio. What better than to have somebody that was born on September 19th to be a guest in our studio for our 1 year anniversary, September 19th. Like a good plan, mark it on your calendar. We have a whole lot of other things to mark on your calendar. We'll be showing you later on in the show. So get your paper and pencil handy and get ready to mark it all down, because we've got some guests you're not going to want to miss. Updates on our events, any of after events update. The only one I can tell you about is that I had a fine time doing a tour and fun time in the Pirate and Treasure Museum on the 21st this past weekend for a little boy named Timothy. And he is a Make-A-Wish child. And him and his brothers, 2 brothers, and his mom and dad came to the Pirate Museum, courtesy of the crew of the 13. And I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to the crew of the 13 for the opportunity to be a part of your Make-A-Wish for that child. It was an honor to be a part of it. I thank you very, very much. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, what do you say we bring our special guest in? Because I was able to get everything in as under 7 minutes, just so that we could have our special guest. So just a minute now, let's go ahead and put up something, because I want to tell you about our special guest as I introduce her. This is Carol Busby, and she's written a wonderful, wonderful book, Sailing Against the Tide. We'll talk more about it, but she's here in St. Augustine this week. She's from New Hampshire, but we're doing a book signing of her book from 11 to 2 this week at the Pirate and Treasure Museum in the courtyard. So ladies and gentlemen, come down and get one of her books. I have one copy of it right here, Sailing Against the Tides. And ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the great Carol Busby. Aye, very good. And welcome to our show, Carol.
Well, thank you, Captain. I'm delighted to be here.
And we're delighted to have your book. As you can see, I have the book here. And I will be honest, I have not read the entire book cover to cover. I have read bits and pieces of the book because I just like to thumb through. Sometimes I don't get the chance or the luxury to just sit down and read as much as I love to. But I really found bits and pieces of it. And the whole premise of the book is a wonderful premise. And it's about the great pirate, the female pirate,
Anne Bonny.
Anne Bonny.
One of 2 Caribbean female pirates that we know about. And do you want me to tell you about Anne Bonny?
Go ahead, please do. This is your time on the screen.
All right. Anne Bonny was born in Ireland of a lawyer and his maid while his wife was off recovering from childbirth. But he liked the maid and his daughter Anne so much that he dressed Anne as a boy so she could come and be a clerk for him in his law practice. Eventually, his wife got a little tired about this, and so she kicked him out, and he said, well, I'm going to the Carolinas, and he took Anne and her mother with him, not his legal wife, but Anne and her mother. So he ends up in Carolina, and he starts out as a law practice, but he can't make a go of it, but he gets into merchandising. So he ends up with a big plantation.
Maximus, that's enough.
So Anne Bonny is this bastard child, if you'll pardon the expression, but that is exactly what she was, who is growing up as the favored daughter on a giant Carolina plantation. She, however, has red hair and a rebellious streak to go with it. So what she does is she says, gee, Dad, I don't want to marry any of these nice boys you're throwing at me, who all want to marry her because she's going to come into a lot of money. She picks a ne'er-do-well named James Bonny. James Bonny was basically worthless. So she goes from being Anne Cormack to being Anne Bonny and runs away from home because her father throws her out. James and Anne end up in Jamaica, and they end up chatting up. He kind of does a little piracy, but he's not very good at it. And then in 1717, as all you pirates know, there was a proclamation from the king granting amnesty. James Bonny wants to take the amnesty, Anne Bonny does not. She also has, in the meantime, gotten involved with Calico Jack Rackham. So she and Jack Rackham take off, And they end up on board with them on their ship the other female pirate that we know about, Mary Read, who has also grown up being dressed like a boy. And eventually, Woodes Rogers sends out ships and they get captured, and everybody on the crew is sentenced to be hanged. Jack Rackham asks for a special dispensation. Anne Bonny comes to him as he's going off to the gallows. And she says to him, if you had fought like a man, you wouldn't be hanged like a dog. Small words of comfort from your girlfriend. Both Anne and Mary, meanwhile, found themselves pregnant. And under British law at the time, you could not hang a woman who was pregnant. You had to wait till she gave birth. Then you could hang her, which apparently since I live up in New England, I am told is also what saved quite a lot of the women at the Salem witch trials. If they were pregnant, they weren't hanged right away. Mary Read, we know, died of a fever in prison. Anne Bonny, as far as we know, did not get hanged, but all there are out there are rumors. And you will read books that will assert that this, or this is the fate of Anne Bonny. But the truth is, they're all rumors. There's no hardcore evidence as to what happened to her.
They're only conspiracy theories, more so than just rumors, but they are
they're
conspiracy theories.
This happened, she lived here, she lived there. So I took some of those rumors and I created an after piracy story for her. So it's the story of a young woman who is now been set up in a marriage with a man named Joseph Burley by her father, who rescues her from prison. And he stakes them to a plantation in faraway Virginia. Probably didn't want her home anymore. So Joseph and Anne, who never knew each other, are married and sent off to Virginia, where they have this plantation. They don't know how to run the plantation. Anne is vehemently opposed to slavery. So they've got to adjust to figure out how to start this new part to their lives. So my vision of Anne Bonny is that she still would have been that rebellious girl, but she also had recreated herself more than one time, and she'd be able to adjust. So they become very big in Virginia society. They become friends of the governor. Meanwhile, I don't want to give away too much.
You give too much more away, nobody will ever buy the book.
I know. All kinds of stuff happens.
So one of my opinions of the book, reading bits and pieces of it, one of my opinions, and one of the things that I told them when we were making the decision to put it in the gift shop at the Pirate and Treasure Museum, was that in this day and age when stories of young women and their strength and their positiveness on life, this is a good book.
Yes.
It's a very good book because it talks about the possibilities of the strength of Anne Bonny, because she wasn't a weakling anyway, and she was a very good sword fighter also, by the way.
And a good shot.
And so this book really, it's a great read for young ladies, for young women, yes. Teenage girls up to younger women, because it talks about the empowerment of women. And in this day and age, that's one of the major topics of many conversations amongst everybody, is the equality and the empowerment of women and the fairer sex. So it's a great read. It's a good book. We carry it in the Pirate and Treasure Museum. And if you come down this weekend, this will only be the second out of several other times that I tell you come down this weekend to the Pirate and Treasure Museum on the courtyard and get your own copy of it,
which I will autograph.
And then have it autographed by the author right there. Sailing Against the Tide. It's a great book. So what made you decide that you wanted to write this particular book or use Anne Bonny as your main character?
Well, I've always been interested in tall ships and sailing ships and pirates. I've been reading a lot about pirates for quite a long time. My husband thinks he was a pirate in a prior life. But I've always loved sailing ships, so I've always been interested in pirates. And I was particularly fascinated with the fact that there are so few women pirates that you read about. There's Mary Read and Anne Bonny. There's Grace O'Malley, who was kind of a pirate in Ireland. And then there was this Chinese lady who I could not begin to pronounce her name, but she was a big pirate. So I first got interested in what happened when pirates went ashore. Because pirates would take their booty, they would go ashore, and they would blow it all in taverns and brothels. And I know some of the tavern owners became very wealthy from this happening. I always kind of wondered what happened to the brothel people. From that, I kind of circled back to Anne Bonny and got really interested in what happened to her. And I started doing the research and discovered that there is no solid written evidence as to what happened to her.
And you'd also be surprised at this too. So I'm going to surprise you with this. Several years ago, I had to do a Skype lecture. That was when Skype was really big. I did a Skype lecture for the University of Salford in Manchester, England, on pirate history.
Oh, cool.
And it was an hour-and-a-half lecture, but they had sent me the questions ahead of time so that there would be no waste of time. And the biggest question they had that caused the biggest challenge for me, primarily the lecture was on Blackbeard. They were more interested on Blackbeard. And one of the biggest questions that had such a big challenge, the stories, depending on where you go to get your information on Blackbeard, he had anywhere from 13 to 17 wives. So they wanted to know if there was any record of any of the women names. And when I did my research, there were very few records of any of the women's names, which leads you to believe, one, maybe there was not 13 to 17 women, but it also leads you to believe that almost all of them were marriages of convenience and not of religious or sanction.
Yes.
So it does lead you to believe that. It also, during my research though, I found out that there were over a dozen women that were pirates during the colonial times, during the 1600s. A dozen. Most of them were not mentioned by name, but more by reputation or by location of where they did their pirating. And none of them ever made great links to fame, which is probably another reason why their name is not really in the history book. But there were many, many women that became pirates. During the colonial times in the 1600s, the British colonial times, I'm sure it was probably a more lucrative way to make money, or to at least take care of yourself, because the British were taking everything from them. You know, and that's one of the major reasons for the American Revolution, was that these were British citizens here in the colonies, but they were being taxed 2 and 3 times for what all the normal citizens were only being taxed once for. So it was a surprise to find out that there were so many women that were part of either pirates or part of pirate crews. It was very, very interesting. But Anne Bonny and Mary Read make a name for themselves. And Mary Read's story is even interesting because she dresses as a man she wasn't just a pirate. Before she became a pirate, she was in a military, an army unit.
Well, she was first in an army unit, and then she realized she wasn't going to be promoted. So she switched over to a horse unit. This was over in Europe when the British were fighting, as they so often were. And she actually fell in love with the guy she shared the tent with. Now, the guy she shared the tent with was pretty happy about this until he figured out that she actually did have a moral code, and instead of being his in the tent mistress, she wanted the whole thing. So they got married, they left the army, they opened a tavern, which was frequented by the members of the military who were in the area, and then the war ended, and he died. And there she was again. And
so she went to sailing, and she took to the sea, and it's not just pirate ships that women were not really allowed on. Women were not allowed in military units, sailing. Women weren't allowed really on any kind of sailing ships whatsoever, other than passenger ships.
Terrible bad luck.
Terrible bad luck
on board.
So she took to being a man again.
Yep.
and then came across Calico Jack and Aunt Bonnie, and then that's the rest of that is history also. So that part of the Caribbean pirates, which is what most everybody knows, especially in this country, 1680s to 1720s is the golden age of piracy, and that's what almost everybody who
Yeah.
really knows about pirate history. So, besides this book, have you written any other books?
I have. This is the only one I've actually published. I'm in the middle of working on another one now that I have great hopes for. But I have written 3 full other books and magazine articles, newspaper articles. I have 2 degrees in English, one from University of California, Berkeley, one from University of Nevada. Plus I have a law degree from University of Oregon. So, and I've also done teaching of writing, and in fact just took on a new tutoring position. I love to write. I've always loved to write. The first article I ever had published was in a Beatles fan club magazine. I know I'm dating myself. I was very young at the time. But that was the first article I ever had published.
What was it? What was the content of the article? Now you have me curious. I have 2 questions. What's the content of the article, and which one of the 4 was your favorite?
Well, this magazine had stories about, there was like stories about the Beatles on tour and what they were doing. And I flipped it so that I was writing from inside the tour instead of from outside the tour. And honestly, it's been so long, and those are long lost, but I contributed to that magazine repeatedly under the pseudonym, are you ready, guys? Lorac Celtab, which is Carol Beatles backwards. How cool is that?
That is pretty cool.
Paul was always my favorite, but I had kind of a soft spot for George as well.
Yeah, I kind of liked all of them myself.
Well,
I lived in England when they were becoming famous.
Oh wow!
I was a little boy. My father was in the Air Force and stationed at a Air Force base over there, and I was 5 years old when we came back to the United States in '64, which is when they came back. And I just learned here's a bit of Beatle trivia for you. Before the last 2 hurricanes hit St. Augustine, the last hurricane that hit St. Augustine was 1964, and that was Hurricane Dora. I believe it was Dora. And the Beatles were supposed to do a show in Jacksonville that week.
Really?
And got sidelined away and ended up spending the week down in the Keys.
They probably had a better time.
They probably did. They did not get to Jacksonville show. So that's a piece of trivia history about the Beatles that I learned about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I don't remember how I learned it, but I think it popped up on the trivia stuff that I watch on the screen. So
I actually like it when people say, what was the first concert you ever went to? And my first concert was the Beatles at the Cow Palace in San Francisco in 1965.
Wow. Yeah.
I still have the tickets.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. See, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about all kinds of history here, and Beatles are history.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I don't mean Beatles are history like they mean nothing. Their influence on everything having to do with rock and roll is still great.
And I'm pop culture.
That too. And I'm still a huge fan of Paul McCartney. I've met Ringo Starr once when he was in Las Vegas over at the Hard Rock Cafe. But I'm still always a fan of Paul McCartney. It's a loss that we lose 2 of the others. George Harrison was a great musician. His most beloved song, "My Guitar Slowly Weeps." That's one of my favorite songs of George Harrison. And of course, John Lennon. So many of his songs are just icons.
Yeah.
So it's really great. So in a way, you've spread up a whole gambit of going from Beatles and rock and roll to pirates and tall ships.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big jump. back and
Well,
forth.
My next book I'm working on is a ghost story that starts in St. Augustine.
Oh, very cool.
So I have one of my best friends lives here, and I won't even tell you about that because that would take all evening. But we go by Mary Todd Lincoln and Jackie Kennedy. I'm Jackie Kennedy. She's Mary Todd Lincoln. And we find a purse hidden behind one of those loopy towel things, the cloth towels.
The old-fashioned one.
Yeah, that's behind that in a wall, and we have to figure out where the purse came from, what the significance is, and why there's this black shadow falling what's around everywhere.
Very, very cool. If you look, second book down in that pile there, this is your friend's book. My navigator there is not prepared for this, so it won't matter. Carol's friend is here with us. She's sitting over in the green room, and she wrote a book, and I'm going to hold it closer to the screen so you can see it. I'm plugging it tonight. It's called Wicked in St. Augustine, and it's really, I have had conversations with her about it, and it's about all the brothels and the rum running and the gambling of old St. Augustine.
It goes back actually to the beginning of St. Augustine because there were prostitutes on the first ships that came over. So it covers quite a bit of history.
So it's an interesting book, and we're going to try to get her on the show eventually also. We're very lucky all of a sudden over the past week and a half, I've been able to acquire, and we're going to talk about it more in depth later, but I've been able to acquire a guest for almost every show from now until November.
That's because this is such a cool show.
Well, yeah, I'll take that. I think it's because it's a lot of fun, and we're starting to really reach out. One of the things I'm happy about is that we have school teachers, because I meet a lot of school teachers because of all the educational tours we do at the museum. And we have a lot of school teachers that go back. They can go to our YouTube channel, as can any of you. Go to our YouTube channel, and you can pick out any episode you want, and you can watch it over and over and over again. And we're getting, Mr. Longwood, what are we getting? 1,500 views a week combined on all of our episodes? Mr. Longwood, are you there?
I'm there.
Okay, all right. I thought you went to sleep on me. So what are we getting? 12 to 1,500 views on all of our episodes combined?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yep, that's pretty good. So we're happy with that. I have a few school teachers that have come and said, yeah, the episode you did on Mother's Day or the episode you did on pets in the United States, we've shared it with the children. And we've got some other episodes that are coming up. So so you live in New Hampshire.
Yes, I do.
But you visit St. Augustine on a regular basis, because this is like the third time we've talked, right?
Yes,
in a year.
It is. Yes, it is. Well, my friend Ann is here, and when I can't take it in New Hampshire anymore, I bail and come down here. No, I love New Hampshire. I grew up in California, lived in Nevada and Oregon, and then in Belize in Central America, big pirate location. And then moved up to New Hampshire, and I love the rivers and the street and the trees and the ocean and all of the nature that's up there. But I'm a restless soul, like so many pirates are. I have one daughter who lives in New Jersey, the other one lives in London. So I get restless if I stuck in one place too long.
So are either the two daughters writers? Have they followed in mom's footsteps?
No, they have not. But they do contact mom whenever they're doing something for work and need editing. Gee, Mom, can you tell me what the right way to say this is? Sure.
Well, this book is available down at the Pirate and Treasure Museum, and it will be available all week, but we'd like you to come down from 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock and buy one of the books.
Love to see you.
Have Miss Carol autograph the book for you. We're going to be putting out our poster on a regular basis all through the week to try to get everybody to come down and have a real good crowd there. Something new that we're attempting to do as the Captain's Quarters podcast, some of the authors that we have, we'd like to try to make sure that they all get an opportunity to do a book signing down at the Pirate and Treasure Museum. We have a great multitude of books and some really great authors. And of course, on our show, we had Matt Frick, who did a book on Captain Thomas II, the pirate of Newport, Rhode Island. And I'm trying to get Captain Fizz on board. He's a great diver and treasure hunter, and he's written a couple of books that I have in my collection. And I have a very great collection of pirate books, both fiction and nonfiction. And the nonfiction ones are really, really wonderful to read because it's just entertaining to sit down and know a little bit about pirate history and then learn a little bit more about pirate history because the nuances of real pirate history is in your book. And is in many of the books.
One of the reasons that Mary Read and Anne Bonny are so well known is that they showed up in the first pirate book, or what was pretty much the first pirate book, The General History of Pirates by Captain Johnson. And under Jack Rackham's crew, he gives a special section to Mary Read and a special section to Anne Bonny. How much of what he says is 100% correct, we don't know, but it's as close to the actual time that all this stuff was happening that it's probably more accurate than not.
Yeah, that's one of the things I tell people too when it comes to, especially when they come to my tours. I tell people that everything about history, whether it's pirate or it's the American Revolution or the American Civil War, prior to the invention of photography equipment, good photography equipment, because the photography equipment during the Civil War was not great, but it did what it could do. But also prior to the invention of recording devices, a lot of everything we know about history is more assumptive than we'd care to admit at times.
Yeah.
Because we have to take books that were written in the time. Esquemeling writes a book in 1684 all about pirates.
Yeah.
We have a copy of it in the Pirate Museum. And you take that book, and there's a book elsewhere in the museum about Blackbeard himself, and you take those stories. They're like the dime novels of the 1880s about gunfighters. They're greatly exaggerated a lot of times, and those exaggerations make it into the movies.
Yeah.
And so when you're studying history or trying to understand history more so, you're taking your information from diaries or letters or manuscripts or newspapers, if you can find them from the day, scripts from plays and theater.
Or word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Some guy who was drunk in the pub last week.
And you take that. I mean, it's one of the reasons why a lot of American Indian history is lost, because their history was handed down by storytellers from generation to generation. They did not record it in any way, shape, or form. So a lot of the history of the American Indians is completely lost. But you have to make assumptions that some of it's right and some of it's close. Some of it's outlandish. I mean, if you actually put some common sense behind it, the whole concept of pirate buried treasure is not. I mean, you brought up one very good point. These pirates, they what's the word I want to use here? They frivolously squandered their money.
Yes, they did.
Now, I do add my own assumption to that. My assumption is that, the average lifespan for almost all these pirates during the golden age of piracy was only 24 to 30 months.
Yeah,
it was short. I believe most of these men knew their time was short.
Yeah.
I believe they actually understood that they had picked a profession or an adventure that was not going to end well for them. But the reason they picked it was not because of the money, but they picked it because it was them making their choice about their control of their destiny and their freedom of their life.
One of the things that I have put into Anne Bonny's character is that she's very vehemently opposed to slavery, partly because she was on pirate ships. And pirate ships were notoriously egalitarian and democratic. They would pick up crew from wherever they could get anybody. So they had American Indians, they had freed slaves, they had escaped slaves, they even had Chinese people on these pirate ships, as well as, of course, the Irish, the Scottish, the British, the French. I mean, it was a very egalitarian society. And it would be, plus she had grown up on her father's plantation and had seen that kind of slavery. So you can see why it would make sense to me that this would be a real problem for her, because she went into piracy to be free.
Right.
And so did they. And so that's a dilemma of hers that I deal with in the book.
I tell everybody that pirate during some of my tours, not all, but many of my tours, if my tours in the museum vary very much by the questions that are asked. I know exactly what I'd like to tell everybody, and I could do a 2-hour tour in the museum. It'll never be a 3-hour tour, because then we'd be lost forever on a deserted island, especially with Marianne and a professor. That's right. So we never do that. But one of the things I do tell everybody, there's one scene in every pirate movie, there's one scene that actually signifies the openness and the acceptance of pirate crews to every walk of life or every nationality, every skin color. That one scene in every pirate movie is the captain at some point in time is given a speech to the crew.
Yeah.
It's usually a speech to bolster their courage, to get them ready for the next fight. They're about to go to their death. It's probably a fight they're not going to win. Everything's bad about it, but he's still got to give them that pep talk. And then I tell everybody, picture that scene in your mind, and you'll see the heads in my tour. Everybody's nodding. They all realize that is a common scene. Now that you've got the scene in your head, I want you to pull yourself backwards. Be the cameraman and pull yourself backwards and look at the overall scene. Don't look at any individual pirate in there. Don't look at the captain. Don't look at this guy or that guy. Look at every man on that deck standing there, nodding their head, cheering and doing whatever. And I want you to understand something, and I want you to realize something. As you're looking at it, look at that scene now, and those men come in every shape, size, and color.
Yep.
And that's the epitome of proof that pirate crews were so open.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing thing that all these men from all walks of life, all ethnicities, all have one thing that they agree on: democracy.
Yeah.
They didn't become pirates because they were going to be rich, although they were rich. They became pirates because of the one word, for short periods of time. But go back to the idea that they squandered their money.
Yeah.
And what I said about pirates thinking that, or understanding they had a short life.
Yeah.
So this is the other thing I tell people about pirates, because I'm proud to be a pirate and talk about pirate history, and I want people to understand, yes, they're criminals. Yes, they were pretty bad guys and gals. But there's some other things within their livelihood, within their lifetime, that we have to take a lesson from. And one of them was that squandering of money is because they actually, I believe, and I would have to go back in time to actually prove this to be a true point. These men actually are exhibiting by example what we in modern day life tell our kids or our friends or our relatives. You do not know what tomorrow is going to bring. There may not be a next week, a next month, or a next year. So that being the case, live life today.
Yeah.
These pirates did it. They literally did it.
Well, and if you go back to your scene in the pirate movie, the other reason the captains would have been giving this great speech is, a lot of people don't realize it, but they voted captains in.
Absolutely right.
And if they did not like how you were running the ship, that's how Calico Jack got his ship, because I think it was Vane.
It was Charles Vane.
It was Charles Vane, and they didn't like Charles Vane, so they said, okay, you don't get to be captain anymore. We're going to vote in Calico Jack Rackham. And so it was a real democracy, and the portion of any treasure that you got was divided up equally. You know, you got a little extra share if you were captain, a little extra share if you were the navigator, the first mate, but everybody else, it didn't matter what color, shape, size, or even gender you were. Everybody got the same. And you know, the captain's out there giving the speech because he doesn't want to lose his job, among other things.
Well, not only that, but the men are listening to him because they voted him in. They respect him. They revere him as their leader.
Yes.
And they're going to pay attention to him. And you know, so here's an easy way for anybody that's not a pirate or doesn't understand true pirate history. Here's a really easy way to understand the code, which is what we're talking about, because the code is what signified that every man got an equal share of the food, the rum, equal share of the rum, equal share of the money, and one vote. They got those 5 privileges. But I want you to understand something. Vote was very important, but so were those 4 shares.
Yeah.
Each man, literally, in modern day time, if you were actually to equate it to what some people would understand, these men were shareholders.
Yeah.
The code was actually a limited liability corporation in a way. They were a business entity, and the code was their business model. I jokingly say, and their code was also their HR.
Well, and it was an employee base. It was employee-owned business.
It totally
Completely.
was. And because each man by virtue of the vote had control of their destiny. They had a say. Did they always get their way? No, because it was a majority rule. Some of the men might vote in a direction that the majority doesn't vote, but they still had to accept it, and they still did accept it. In Charles Vane's case, they didn't like him so much that they actually turned him over to the authorities so he could get hung.
Yeah.
That's how bad they didn't. That's how bad they didn't want him around. So the whole pirate history, and Anne Bonny and Mary Read are right in the smack dab middle of all of this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they do make a name for themselves in the history books. Did you ever watch Black Sails?
Oh yes, I did.
I actually liked their portrayal of Anne Bonny.
I had some issues with it. I think her intelligence and her fierceness were absolutely dead on. Was she an all-out lesbian? Not so sure about that. I mean, they have wondered about her and Mary Read, but there's, nobody was going to write that down.
And there's nothing written down about that. That's another one of those conspiracy type or the other ideas.
Obviously, I really liked her hat.
I liked her because in Black Sails they portrayed her as a much more very good looking woman than the actual pictures we have that we've seen.
Where's the picture?
Yeah.
This is an actual picture of her.
Yeah, go right up to the camera. The camera's right there. There you go.
Yeah, this is an actual picture of her that was drawn in the time period. Now you'll see versions of this where she's not wearing a top, but I chose not to go that way.
That's fine.
And she's, it's kind of hard
look, there we go.
Yeah, that's Black
My
Sails.
navigator is always spot on. You are quick, Mr. Navigator. Now, that's a good looking picture of her, and I really think if you look at the hat is kind of her too.
Yeah, the hat plays a big part in my book.
And
too.
she really was. If you actually study some of the other things, she wasn't exactly a lover of men in the general sense. In the general sense, because women in that time frame, they were terribly mistreated.
Oh, it was
in a lot of cases they were terribly mistreated. So she was more of a man hater. But Calico Jack must have had something that.
Yeah, well, I think James Bonny was a way to get away from her father.
And the things that I've read and the things that I understand, yes, it was just a way for her to get away from Daddy and the plantation and to get away
and
from
all of that. The restrictions.
And because she had no real love for him.
Yeah, no, well, she had to, as she was growing up, realize that he had abandoned his wife.
Yeah.
And then her mother died, so it was just the two of them. And one of the things that I tried to do in the book, my first concept of the book is to try to figure out how somebody like Anne Bonny, who was intelligent and fierce and rebellious, would have adjusted to 18th century Virginia society and how difficult that would be. She did have the advantage of having grown up on a plantation, so she had some of the basic skills, but she would have had to really suppress herself in many ways in order to survive.
True.
In that kind of an environment. And she not only does that, but she thrives.
And we have so much going on in society today that keeps looking at the ugly, the negative, the bad side of our history. And then they want everybody to apologize for it. And I find that to be ridiculously silly, for lack of a better word, because apologizing for something that was created by my ancestors or your ancestors or their ancestors the apology means nothing because we have no control over it. We have to learn from that history.
Well, what do you, I mean, I think what bothers me is when people try to suppress history. I think you need to understand history. You need to read history. You need to enjoy history. Because unless you know how we got here, you don't know where we are.
I mean, and I'll still use the pirate point of view or the pirate genre. There are people that tourists in St. Augustine, and I'm roaming around St. Augustine, either at the museum or in the bars that I'll frequent and go and talk to tourists and do card tricks and have a good time. There are people that'll come up to me and go, why are you portraying somebody that was despicable and into such terrible, terrible things in history? And I said, because the other side of that is that they might have been dastardly, despicable men at times, but it was hard times for everybody, and the navies weren't any better at times. And in fact, if it were not for pirates, it could easily be said that the entire concept of democracy might not have ever reached the shores of our colonies.
Yeah.
So for every bad, there's good. So the pirates were bad people. They were criminals. That's the funny part to me, the ironic part, that children come into the museum and all they know about pirates is Pirates of the Caribbean 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Oh,
Jake and the Neverland Pirates, or Peter Pan and Captain Hook. They don't understand that the museum is all about crime. It's about crime and criminals.
And loot.
And loot and money. And so there's a good and bad to every piece of history in the world.
Oh, of course there is.
And when and so you have to take and understand both sides of it. You don't have to agree with it in any way, shape, or form. I never ask anybody to agree with it, but you do have to understand that we're a long ways in our world now from anything like that being the way it is in our world, in our country.
Yeah.
There are still countries that are still having problems because they're third world countries and democracy has never hit them. So, but pirate history is very important. You touch on the strength of a woman in this book, and the what if she had lived past her jail time and either her death or whatever happened to her. And it's a great book, and it's well worth
Thank
it.
you.
And we want everybody to come down to the St. Augustine Pirate and Treasure Museum Saturday at 11 o'clock in the morning. We'll be there, or I will be doing tours inside, but I'll step out every once in a while and come out and say hello. But Carol will be there with also her good friend who wrote the book Wicked. Now, we not necessarily going to be able to do anything with that book this time because the Pirate and Treasure Museum doesn't carry that book now. But in the future, we hope it will, and then we can do another book signing with Carol and with our other book. In fact, I'm hoping to try to set up some kind of a multi-author book deal on top of that courtyard.
Carol,
Yeah.
was Anne Bonny a pirate lord?
A pirate lord?
No, she never was.
Okay.
She was
She
not
was
a
never
pirate
a
lord.
captain.
She was never a captain.
No.
But I'm pretty sure that being the girlfriend of Calico Jack, she probably had quite a bit of voice and say into what was going on the ship. I'm quite sure of that.
She had his ear. In fact, he got jealous when she was making advances on Mary Read because he thought Mary Read was a boy. And then Anne found out she was a girl. And she had to tell Calico Jack that Mary was a girl because he was jealous. They were very close.
It's also one of the things that made Calico Jack quite fearsome or fearful by many of the other pirate crews, because having one woman on board your ship meant that you might have been crazy, but having two women on board the ship might mean that you were totally nuts. Totally. So it's a great book. I hope people will come down and join us down at the Pirate Museum and take one of my tours. I'll be doing a tour at 10:30 and 12 and 1:30 on Saturday, and I'm supposed to do a 3 o'clock tour also, so I'll be doing 4 tours. But come down and meet Carol and talk to Carol about her love of pirates and Anne Bonny in this book. And pop that picture up one more time, the poster for this Saturday, Mr. Navigator.
The poster, yeah.
See that, ingrain it in their brain and see what we've got going. But This is a joint effort between the St. Augustine Pirate and Treasure Museum and the Captain's Quarters podcast. And we're hosting this, and we hope to do quite a bit more. So come on down and say hello to us. And as we sit here and do some of the rest of our show, Carol's going to sit here with us. And if she has anything she wants to pop in, by all means, don't be silent.
And if anybody has questions.
And we're going to get to our watchers here in just a minute. Mr. Navigator, I'll tell you what, since it's running to the time it is, our segment on the video clip, let's leave that off for tonight, okay?
Okay.
Let's don't do that. Let's do your This Week in History. Let's go ahead and do that. Then we'll do our thank yous, and then let's see if we can spend some time talking with all the questions and comments that popped up.
Okay.
young damsel I happened to
going to move our screen back to this one here so I can actually see some of the comments that we got. And we can read them off a little better here. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning. And of course, guess what? I am going to have to put in my specs because I like to see what we've got going on here. Did we get some really good comments this time, gentlemen?
Yes.
Aye, there was a lot of comments this time.
Yes, look at this. All the way up here. I'm all the way back up here. Very good, very good. Let's see. Donna, thank you for being a part of the show. We welcome you aboard. There's Donna. There's Adam and Christy. Very good to see you all there too. Zachary Harker. Now, Zachary will be, pardon me, on our show on September 12th. We'll be talking about the lineup here in a few minutes. Let's see. I'm looking. Shirts be in short supply. Okay, why is that? All right, let's see. Ken Smith. Decent shirts can be found on Amazon. You guys must be talking about pirate shirts for everyone. That doesn't have anything to do with me. I find myself going to historical events, so I'm picky when it comes to shirts. Everything about shirts. What's going on here? Kraken is one of my favorites. For rum, of course. That's a good rum. We just drank that one. And let's see. Thank you, Ken Smith, for joining us aboard. Nightingale in Florida. She just joined us. Very good. Jonathan Miller, ahoy all. Very good. See you there. Ransom Mayhem. That'd be my brother over in Panama City Beach. Scarlett Deerheart. Hi, looking forward to spending her birthday with us. She'll be on board our ship. My favorite book is The Pirate Queen by Alan Gold. It's about Grace O'Malley. Very good. I think we have that book in the gift shop, by the way, at the Pirate and Treasure Museum. My brother was just making sure to let you know we have family up in New Hampshire.
Yes.
Flint and Silver, Pieces of Eight and Crossbones. 3-book prequel to Treasure Island, and they are incredible. I will have to look those ones up. I have not heard of those 3. And if they're a prequel to that, that'll be worth putting up. My favorite book about pirates so far is The Price of Freedom by A.C. Crispin. It's about Jack Sparrow and how the Black Pearl got its name. So it's a fictional history book about the dreaded Jack Sparrow. Excuse me a minute. Jack Sparrow. All right. That's my best Barbosa voice. Jack Sparrow.
Very good.
All right, let's see. Who else do we have here? Scarlett. Grace O'Malley is often forgotten because she was decades before the golden age of piracy, but she was so successful that she nearly bankrupted the English treasury.
I think she was more than decades before.
I think she was about 8 decades before.
Yeah, I was thinking 100 maybe.
She also is not the only one to almost bankrupt the English treasury. Pirates of the golden age of piracy almost bankrupt the English, the Spanish, and the French treasuries.
Yeah.
If it had not been for some of the things they were doing, that's starting to bother me, and I'm going to throw it over there. If they had not been reined in the 1720s, they very well could have taken the treasuries down of all 3 countries, the financial institution.
This is my favorite book, Captain.
What's that?
That's my favorite book.
Yes, I have about 3 different copies of it in my collection from 3 different time frames.
My favorite.
It's a book well worth reading because I like to tell everybody that Treasure Island kind of is the basic foundation for almost every other pirate story ever written or ever done in the films.
Well, you know what else? Treasure Island is responsible for people thinking that pirates say "arr."
Pirates say it. Well, the movie Long John Silver,
right,
1956.
The character the guy who was playing Long John Silver was Scottish and had trouble with some of the words. And that's where, because if you read Treasure Island, it's not in there at all.
Same with parrots on their shoulders. Long John Silver had a parrot. That wasn't commonplace either. So,
the other thing is that a lot of people don't realize, but Black Sails is a prequel to Treasure Island.
Yes, it is.
Full of real and fictional characters.
That's one of the
mishmash.
That's one of the things I liked about Black Sails, that it was such a conjoining effort of real and fictional pirates that it was really interesting. And Flint, was not a real pirate,
Right.
and you basically come to a realization that John Silver is Long John Silver.
Yeah.
And I came to that realization when he loses his leg.
Right.
And
That's
that's
about
when you
the
come to
time
the-
I figured it.
And that's when you come to that realization, hey, that's Long John Silver. This
Yeah.
is the start of something else.
And if you saw Black Sails and you haven't read Treasure Island, go back and read it.
Yes, yes. And the 3 seasons of Black Sails, the first season was, to me, a bit too adult.
It was too much for Donna.
Yeah, it was too much for Donna. But they toned it down a bit in the second and the third season, and I really like Black Sails, and I look forward to if they really will do Treasure Island in the same
Yeah,
context.
nice.
So I think it'll be a wonderful, another pirate book, and it's not necessarily pirate, but it is that there is a good section of it that's pirate because they spend all their time getting ready for the pirate attack, and that's Swiss Family Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Swiss Family Robinson is a good story too. It's a good family story. Let's see. So Marauder Mason is going to burst out laughing for some reason. I wonder why. And there he is laughing again. Hey, I just noticed. Did you get a haircut?
I sure did. I shaved my face.
You did. You shaved your face too.
Mhm.
Hey, you know what? You look like Danny Kaye. Pop his picture back up there. You probably don't even know who the hell Danny Kaye is,
Yeah,
do you?
probably not.
I have no clue.
He looks like Danny Kaye.
You have to watch White Christmas.
White Christmas or Court Jester.
Yeah,
Court Jester is
the
a
other
great one. Great one. All right. Let's see what else do we have here. I see Black Sails. Oh, Jim, good to see you on. I didn't see you on at first. Very well done in your opinion. Of course it was. It's a good storyline. But the best part is because it's fictional history and they blend those real pirates in, they do make Charles Vane a bit more of a romantic figure than he actually was, though. Because almost every woman I ever talked to who's seen Black Sails, the first words out of their mouth are, "Oh, did you see Charles Vane?"
Oh, no.
Yeah, so
No, not so much.
yeah. So let's see who else was in here. I see Carol, you are an intriguing and brilliant lady. That is from Donna, one of our followers.
Thank you, Donna.
Let's see. Zachary Harper, you shaved your face, put it back. Donna is actually a native of St. Augustine, and the last direct hit for a hurricane, she backs me up, was Dora. The other 2 hurricanes we had were not direct hits, but Dora was a category 2. That's back then when they only had categories 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Now they have 5. Let's see. Ken Smith. Anything I'm missing there, guys? If you see something I'm missing, throw it up there. Charles Vane. See there's old Scarlet Deerheart. I'll tell you what, Scarlet, we'll see what we can do about that for your birthday. Marauder Mason says Elizabeth Swann from the 3rd Pirate of the Caribbean movie. Great speech, but I couldn't stand her voice. Let's see. Couple of others here. I didn't like Anne Bonny's accent in Black Sails. She was Irish, not British.
That's true.
That's true. I overlooked it because she was cute.
I'm also not sure what Irish accents in 1700 sounded like.
That's the other thing too. We have a lot of people that there's a movie. I can't remember the name of it. I'm going to have to go and look the movie up now and make sure I have it because this conversation will come up again. But there's a movie about this college professor who invents a time machine.
Yeah.
And they go back in time.
Yeah.
He's also an expert on French and British history. And he goes back into a time, I'm pretty sure in either the 16 or the 15 or the 1600s when the British and the French are always fighting.
Yeah.
And he goes back in time. Well, he never comes back. And his students thought he was worth something, so they repaired the machine and they went back in time to find him. And they quickly find out that the French and the British words and accents they know from modern day times
Totally.
do not work
Yeah.
in that time frame.
Yeah.
And they're captured as spies because they can't speak French properly. And it shows a perfect example of how we have taken the languages and how we think they would sound, and it wouldn't. The rest of the movie is pretty good, but that one point about the language and the words and everything not matching, it's a pretty interesting concept, and people ought to pay attention to that.
Well, it's like people think the founding fathers sounded like us, and they didn't. They had British accents because they were British citizens.
Well, here's 2 points I always make about that. That point is true. There's 2 other points. The other point is that our founding fathers were all in their late 20s and early 30s. They weren't old men.
Except for Franklin.
Except for Franklin. And Franklin wasn't only an old man, he was a dirty old man.
Yes, he was.
But that's the one point that people miss. Everybody thinks they're just old men. What was the other point I was going to make? Now I forgot the other point.
It was really important, though.
Yeah, probably. Darn it, it'll come to me in a few minutes too. Probably at the end of the show it'll come to me. But they weren't. Oh, I know what it was. Here's the other point. And this goes to, and this is not meant to be a complete display of my personal opinion, other than the fact that I believe that tearing down statues is wrong because it's an attempt to remove and change history. I just do not believe that's what we should do. We should understand and learn from those statues. But one of the biggest things that I hear people say, well, we remove these statues of the American Civil War generals and the soldiers because they were traitors to their country. And when somebody tells me that, I look them right in the eye and say, you're absolutely right. They were traitors to their country. They had a purpose, they had an idea, they had a thought that was different than what the country was going with, and they stood for what they wanted. They stood up for what they wanted to stand up for. That's fine. But then you have to ask the question, what nationality was Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, George Washington, the whole 9 yards? They were British, ladies and gentlemen. They were disloyal to their king.
I think it was Franklin or Adams who said, we better hang together for we will surely hang alone. Because they were traitors. And if they hadn't hung together, they would have each been knocked off by the British government.
Timeline. Jonathan Miller gives me the movie Timeline. Timeline is the name of the movie. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Jonathan Miller. I appreciate that. That's one of the nice things about having people watch the show. We're having conversations, and that's one of the best parts about the show. And believe it or not, we've gone over our time by 7 minutes, but I don't see anybody leaving, so we're going to go ahead and finish out our show here for a few more minutes. Did we miss anything else? Ken Smith put down a pretty long one here. Let me see if I can read it. If history offends you, then good. Then you will learn from it and take steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. If you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. That is often the thing that is often said. You're absolutely right. Lots of great comments out there, everybody. I'm sure I've missed a few here and there. I have wrote a pirate story about my crew with third-person view. The story was inspired by my group telling stories of how we would have acted in character. I had one copy printed as proof. Cool, I'd like to see that, Zachary Harker. And he's going to be on our show also. He's up in Michigan. He's a pirate crew in Michigan. We have pirates from Michigan, Quebec, California, Nevada, all watching our show. So we're very happy about it.
Bill, do you agree?
So, Davey, I think I've gotten to the bottom of the questions and comments. I think we're good. If I missed something, my apologies to anybody. We do go back and look. Will the Historian is the one with Paul Walker and the comedian Billy from Scotland. Yes, it is. And he actually put down, it was Timeline. You're absolutely right. And for those of you that don't know, Will the Historian is my son. He is a high school history teacher in Alabama. And it's good to see him on. I'm so proud of him for the things he does with his classes. And it's great to have him be a part of my show. I actually want to have him be a guest on our show and talk about some point in history. And I believe his favorite part or his time frame of history is the Second World War. So maybe December would be a great time to talk about the Second World War, yes. D-Day.
Bill.
Pearl Harbor Day.
Pearl Harbor.
Yes, David, what was it?
Don't you think that if anybody from our time was to go back 16, I don't think we could take the smell
Yeah.
of the people of
I
the.
do tell, you know what I tell people? Anybody that wants to go back in time needs to consider 2 letters before they consider the time going back in time would be a good thing. And those 2 letters are AC.
Well, the other thing is, the Outlander people have gone back in time, and I always thought they adjusted a little too easily.
Yes, I think so too. Now, my son says that he could make an argument that the founding fathers did not see themselves as English. I could see that as being an argument, and I would actually have to have a conversation about that. That would be pretty good.
I think
What
they did and they didn't.
Yeah,
You know?
I think in some ways they did, and in other ways they didn't.
Yeah.
I think that's where the line would be. Why do the modern day pirates all operate out of Washington, D.C.? Yeah,
Because that's where the money is.
we couldn't drink the water. Yeah, that's true too. Ransom Mayhem says 2 words, B-O. That's another one. Here's another one for you. Two letters, B-O-A-C. How about T-P? That's another one. We don't even want to talk about that.
Or P-U.
Aye, that one too. Nightingale, that's why we love rum. Yes, sir, we surely love rum. Davey, before I forget, let's go ahead and put up the on the horizon picture, and then we'll do the thank you to everybody.
Horizon first?
Yeah, let's do that and get it out of the way, and then we'll do a thank you, and then we'll go ahead and sign. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the list of all of our shows. We're going to be posting that on Facebook for everybody to see, but that's our list of all our shows, and I'm just going to do a fast recap. Next week is August 1st, and it's Jeff Williams, a great friend of mine, a magician who we've been friends for 30 years, and he is one of the top finger flicking magicians in the country, in the world. He's appeared at the Magic Castle and the Magic Circle in London. Tom Mason will be here. Everybody that pays attention to us knows Tom Mason, great musician with the Blue Buccaneers. He'll be with us. Michael Krosniak, a great magician up in Jacksonville, up and coming magician. He does really well. He's a great close-up artist. I might be able to get him to do a little bit here. We'll see. It's kind of hard to do too much magic here. The River Pirate, Jason Gillette, will be coming in on August 22nd, and we'll be talking about rum. My good friend Max Michaels, he's one of the owners of Ancient City Con that happens here every September 18, 19, right around Talk Like a Pirate Day, and we're going to be talking about Ancient City Con. First week of September, Sketchy Guy. He's the man with our logo and all of our caricatures that we have here. We're hoping to do some more. September 12th, Zachary Harper, the Silver Moon Pirate Crew out of Michigan. He'll be here in studio, actually, because he's here in St. Augustine for the week. So he'll be here. And then we're going to do a special show on September 13th, which is a Tuesday night, ladies and gentlemen, because that happens to be National Defy Superstition Day. And my friend Matt Frick, the author of the book about Thomas II, he will be here in studio with me because he loaned me a book. Hand me that book real quick. He loaned me a book called Folklore of the Sea. It's about folklores and superstition. I'm still reading it. Look how thick it is. I probably won't be able to get through it between now and then, but we're going to talk about superstitions of the nautical world and pirates. And then we have our first anniversary with Scarlett Deerheart on September 19th, Talk Like a Pirate Day. I'm bringing in my brother, Del Ransom Mayhem McRae, the Pirates of the White Sands, on the 26th of September, so that we can talk about their event, the Pirates of the High Seas, on September 7, 8, and 9, I believe it is. And then on October 3rd, a good friend of mine, Mandy Jo Brown. She is the leader of the Utah Pirates. Go figure, Pirates in Utah. She is the leader of that. And she'll be talking about what they do with their pirate crew. They do a lot of history and reading programs for children in school. Then we have the return from Pirates of the High Seas on October 10th. So it is 7, 8, and 9 that we're in Panama City doing their event, and then we'll talk about it and show the pictures. We're going to set up our podcast that weekend over there and take some videos. October 17th, a good friend of mine, Andy Nance. He's an author, he's an actor, he's a radio DJ, a voice. Boy, you think I have a voice. His voice is wonderful, smooth, and scary. And Andy and I got to be in a play together. It was the first time I ever did a stage play where I had to memorize a script. And Andy has been in many plays. and it was an honor to be on the same stage with him. So he'll be here with us then. Mo Las Fagelas. And I know I butchered that, but I'm sorry, Mo. He's a Vegas pirate and has his property set up out there for a Halloween pirate scare. And we're going to talk about that on the 24th of October. He should have it all set up, and we'll do some videos and everything else. October 31st. Right now, I have it marked as a special on-location surprise. We'll just leave it at that because that's Halloween night. November 7th, I'm hoping to have the tasting tours ladies in here. They own a company called Tasting Tours of St. Augustine. And I will be doing a very special presentation during the Christmas holidays of a certain jolly man riding around in a golf cart, giving everybody a joy. And I don't have to say any more. I'm sure you'll know. And my good friend in Quebec Pirates, Marc Froger. He is part of a group of pirates up there, and we're working on a Christmas project together. And we'll tell you more about that on that time. He just today signified that November 14th would be the greatest timing of his project up there. So we'll be working on it. I still have the 21st and the 28th of November open. And as you can see, I have some other names waiting on deck, trying to figure out great times to put all these people in. So we have a great lineup, ladies and gentlemen, a wonderful lineup. And we hope that you'll put all this on your calendar, and we will be advertising these lineups so everybody can keep up with us. It's wonderful to do this show, but we can't do it without a little bit of thank you and a little bit of telling all the people that we care about thank you. So go ahead, Mr. Longwood, put them up in whatever order you want. This, ladies and gentlemen, are our fine sponsors. Ancient City Sirens, Miss Gina Marie and her girls, Dick's Wings, Paper and Strings, our good friends Adam and Christy over in Tampa. Great musical duo, do great pirate music. They'll be here in St. Augustine with us celebrating on August 20th, because around that time frame, it's both Miss Kara's birthday and Miss Christie's birthday. Shiver Me Pictures, that'd be Scarlett Deerhart. Of course, the Colonial Oak Music Park, and ladies and gentlemen, the St. Augustine Pirate and Treasure Museum. That goes without saying. Those are our sponsors. We thank them very much. We'll be sending out letters for more sponsorship coming up soon. We can't do this show without these people here. Of course, W. Mayhem Productions, the St. Augustine Swashbucklers, William Mayhem, that would be me, our Powder Monkey, he's a big hit everywhere. And there's the caricatures of Captain and the quartermaster, the navigator. We're all there, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for us to have the sketchy guy on and explain why he drew us with such big smiles for being pirates. And our charities, ladies and gentlemen, with the St. Augustine Swashbucklers and the Captain's Quarters podcast, these are the charities we primarily support. St. Augustine Youth Services, working with children that have no longer a home with their parents because their parents don't deserve to have children. It's a sad thing. It's a sad thing. Inc., investing in kids. They make sure that teachers in the St. John's area has a little extra money so that they can buy the things they need for their school, their classrooms, so they don't have to pay for it themselves. And of course, the Humane Society, we need to work on a new project for them. And the other one, that logo is our Toys for Pits. Pits means pirates in training. Instead of Toys for Tots, we're Toys for Pits. And ladies and gentlemen, we do a big Christmas drive every year. Those are all our thank yous out there. And I think we've done pretty good. You can go to our Patreon page. There it is right there. We want you to go there if you want. You can be a member. A Patreon member is somebody that pledges to give us a certain small amount of money every month. We have 6 First Mate Patreons. It's only $5 a month. We have no Powder Monkey memberships right now. We have 223 subscribers to our YouTube channel and 6 sponsors. We're pretty strong. It makes enough money for us to pay our fees, to run the program, and to pay for the royalties that we need to use the music and everything else. So we're doing it like legal pirates, ladies and gentlemen. And I will be quite honest with you and tell you, myself, Navigator Longwood, and Gunner Hellfire, we're doing this for the love of it. Because it damn sure ain't for the money, is it right, Pirate Crew? Aye. But we're doing this because we have a good time. And it really does give us something to have a good time for. And don't forget about the Cedar Key Pirates event in November. I have forgotten about it, but I'll try to put it on the calendar and let people know about it. I would like them to send us some messages over here, and so we can get them involved. Ancient City Sirens will be at the Cedar Key Pirate Invasion. Oh, very good. Nice to hear. Very good. I think from that point on now, I think we've reached our point. What do you say, Mr. Longwood?
Yes, I think so.
We've done an hour and 20 minutes.
Yay.
Our guest is wonderful.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun to have Carol
was.
here. Please come down and see us on Saturday, July 30th at 11 o'clock and get one of her books. Have her autograph it. Have her write something special in it just for you. Come down and see us, take a tour of the museum, or just stand around and talk pirate. It's open to everybody. You don't have to be a pirate to enjoy these books. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to sign out. Mr. Longwood.
Part of the podcast.
Part of the crew.
Always cheers to you. We can't do this without all of our fans, our loved ones, and everybody helping us out. We love you all. Thank you very much for being a part of our show. Until next week, cheers and huzzah.